The laughter hit first, sharp, cruel, echoing off the polished marble floor of the downtown office lobby. "Look at him," one voice sneered. "Who wears a suit that cheap? You going to a funeral, kid?" The black teenager froze, clutching the strap of his worn leather briefcase. His name was Marcus Hill, and this was his first interview. The tie around his neck was slightly crooked, his shoes scuffed from walking miles to save bus fare. Every step he took past the suited interns felt heavier. Their smirks burned holes through his chest. He could hear the receptionist chuckle under her breath, papers shuffling like whispers of judgment. The air smelled of fresh coffee and expensive cologne, a world that didn't seem made for him. Inside, Marcus's stomach twisted. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and never return. Yet, he lifted his chin, forcing his trembling hands to stay at his side. "Just keep walking," he told himself, but the humiliation clung to him like smoke. He didn't know it then, but this moment, the mocking, the laughter, the shame, would ignite something inside him far more powerful than anyone in that lobby could imagine. Because this was only the beginning. The world outside Marcus Hill's apartment was loud, chaotic, and relentless. Sirens wailed in the distance, buses hissed to a stop at cracked sidewalks, and neighbors shouted greetings across the courtyard of the crumbling housing complex. Inside, Marcus tightened his tie in front of a broken bathroom mirror, determined to make today look different. The mirror showed a boy who desperately wanted to be seen as a man, 17 years old. Tall but thin, his frame swimming inside the second-hand gray suit his mother had found at a thrift store. The jacket's sleeves were a little too short, the fabric slightly faded, but Marcus wore it with pride. To him, that suit wasn't just cloth. It was armor. It was proof that he belonged somewhere better than where the world thought he did. His mother, Denise Hill, worked double shifts at the local diner. She'd been up since 4 a.m., her hands red from endless scrubbing. As Marcus adjusted his collar, she watched from the doorway, her voice soft but filled with steel. "You walk in there like you own the place," she told him. "Don't let anybody make you feel small. You hear me?" Marcus nodded, though a flicker of doubt rippled across his face. "I hear you, Mama." Denise smiled, but behind her eyes lived the constant worry of a parent who knew how the world looked at her son, not as potential, but as a threat. At school, Marcus was known as the kid who always dressed too nicely. While most teenagers wore sneakers and hoodies, Marcus preferred button-downs and slacks, often from thrift stores, but always pressed and clean. He dreamed of becoming a business owner one day, of wearing real tailored suits, walking into meetings where people listened when he spoke. But dreams didn't protect him from the stares. Teachers praised his intelligence, yet sometimes their compliments carried a sting. "You're so articulate," one teacher once said, surprised, as if expecting otherwise. "You're different from the others," another remarked, a smile hiding the bias. Marcus would force a polite grin, but inside, those words cut deeper than open insults. They weren't saying he was smart. They were saying he wasn't supposed to be. Marcus's closest ally was his grandmother, Evelyn Hill, who lived 2 floors down. She was a retired school secretary, her hands calloused from decades of typing forms and balancing books. She had a way of making Marcus believe in himself even when the world tried to crush him. "You carry the Hill name," she reminded him, "and Hills don't bow. We build." Another quiet ally was his teacher, Mr. Robert Carter, a middle-aged man who saw Marcus's hunger for success. Mr. Carter often slipped Marcus extra books, autobiographies of black entrepreneurs, essays on leadership, guides on finance. He told Marcus, "Knowledge is your real suit. Wear it every day." Then there was his best friend, Jamal Price, a wiry kid with a mischievous grin and a knack for finding trouble. Jamal didn't care about business or suits. He wanted to be a rapper, but he had Marcus's back in every fight, literal or otherwise. "They laugh at you now," Jamal would say, "but one day, you'll laugh last." On the other side stood people like Travis Miller, one of the wealthy interns Marcus had encountered at the downtown office. Travis was 18, blonde-haired and cocky, the kind of kid who never worried about money, who laughed because the world laughed with him, never at him. To Travis, Marcus wasn't competition. He was entertainment. And there was Mr. Dalton, the hiring manager at the company Marcus dreamed of joining. Dalton didn't mock outright. He didn't need to. His clipped tone, dismissive glances, and barely veiled smirks said it all. You don't belong here. The first time Marcus walked into Dalton's office, his heart pounded so loudly he swore the room could hear it. He sat straight, hands folded neatly on his lap. He answered every question with precision and confidence. For a moment, hope bloomed, but then Dalton's eyes drifted to Marcus's suit, lingering a second too long. "Thank you for coming in," Dalton said flatly. "We'll be in touch." Marcus left the building with his head high but his chest hollow. He knew what that phrase meant. He wasn't what they were looking for. At night, Marcus scribbled ideas in a notebook, business plans, clothing brand sketches, ways to design affordable suits for kids like him who wanted to look the part but couldn't afford it. He stayed up past midnight, pages filling with determination, but doubt always crept in. What if they're right? What if I'll always be the kid in the cheap suit that everyone laughs at? It was his grandmother's voice that cut through the noise. "Baby, a seed doesn't look like much when it's buried, but give it time. It grows into something nobody can ignore." One Saturday, Marcus walked into a high-end clothing store, his eyes scanning the racks of perfectly tailored suits. He ran his hand over the fabric, imagining himself wearing one to his future office. "Can I help you?" The clerk's voice was sharp, suspicious. He eyed Marcus's thrift store outfit. "These are expensive. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at another shop." Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. Shoppers nearby glanced at him, some smirking, others avoiding eye contact. He wanted to argue, to demand respect. Instead, he set the jacket back on the rack, nodded politely, and walked out. On the street outside, tears blurred his vision. But alongside the pain came something else, resolve. He whispered under his breath, "One day I'll own a store like that, and no kid will ever feel what I just felt." Money was always tight in the Hill household. Some nights dinner was a little more than rice and beans. Denise's exhaustion showed in her hunched shoulders and cracked voice. Still, she never let Marcus see her break. "Your dreams are my dreams now," she told him. "You go farther than I ever could." Marcus knew the weight of those words. He carried them with every step, every humiliation, every late-night scribble in his notebook. At school, Marcus entered a business pitch competition. He spent weeks preparing, rehearsing in front of mirrors, speaking until his voice went hoarse. His pitch was strong, his delivery sharp. The crowd applauded. But when the winners were announced, Marcus's name wasn't called. Instead, the prize went to Travis Miller, who had stumbled through his pitch but wore confidence and privilege like a crown. Marcus sat in the audience, clapping politely, but inside, a storm raged. What more do I have to prove? As the year pressed on, Marcus faced setback after setback, yet each one left behind an ember of determination. The humiliation in the lobby, the rejection at the store, the loss at the competition, they weren't endings. They were fuel, and Marcus was beginning to understand how much fire lived inside him. The city never truly slept, but Marcus often found himself awake long after it had quieted. The street lamps outside his window flickered over the cracked walls of his room, casting long shadows across the notebook spread open on his desk. Page after page was filled with sketches, ideas, budgets scrawled in pencil, crossed out, rewritten. Tonight was no different. His mother slept in the next room, her snores muffled by exhaustion. Jamal sprawled across Marcus's bed, headphones buzzing with a beat he swore would make him famous one day. But Marcus wasn't thinking about music or even sleep. He was thinking about revenge, not the angry kind, but the kind that transformed humiliation into power. "I'm telling you," Marcus whispered, tapping his pen against the page. "People want to look sharp without spending a fortune. Nobody's doing it right. Not for us. That's where I come in." Jamal pulled out one earbud, raising an eyebrow. "Bro, you're 17. You think folks gonna buy suits from a kid?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "They'll buy respect. And I know what it feels like to walk into a room and not have it. That's my edge. It started small, a business built around affordable, stylish suits. Marcus wanted to flip the script, to give kids like him the armor they deserved without bankrupting their families. He stayed up researching wholesale suppliers, tailoring techniques, and marketing strategies. Mr. Carter, his teacher, noticed Marcus's dark circles one morning and pulled him aside. "You're burning the candle at both ends," Carter warned. Marcus nodded. "But if I don't do this now, I'll never do it." Mr. Carter didn't argue. Instead, he handed Marcus another book, From the Ground Up, Building a Business When You Have Nothing. "Read this." And Marcus, remember, the best revenge is success. Marcus scraped together $200, money saved from mowing lawns, washing cars, and any other odd jobs he could find. He ordered fabric samples online, his hands trembling as he clicked purchase. Weeks later, when the package arrived, Marcus tore it open as if it contained treasure. But reality hit hard. The material was cheap, stiff, and far from the smooth fabrics he'd dreamed of. The prototypes looked more like costumes than suits. Jamal laughed when Marcus tried one on. "Man, you look like you're about to audition for a high school play." Marcus's chest tightened, shame flooding back like the day in the office lobby. He stuffed the suit into his closet, slamming the door. For 2 days, he couldn't bring himself to open that notebook again. But on the third night, his grandmother knocked softly on his door. She didn't scold him for failing. She said, "Baby, mountains don't move on the first push. Try again." Word began to spread at school. Some laughed, whispering behind Marcus's back, "Hill thinks he's some CEO." Others, quietly, were intrigued. A classmate named Kayla, known for her fashion sense, approached Marcus after class. "I heard you're trying to make suits?" she asked. Marcus nodded cautiously. "My cousin's a seamstress. She could help. But you gotta be serious about this." For the first time, Marcus felt a door creak open instead of slam shut. He spent weekends with Kayla's cousin, learning about fabric, cuts, and the art of tailoring. His fingertips grew raw from pinning and stitching, but his confidence slowly sharpened. To launch his vision, Marcus needed capital. He organized a small fundraiser at school, a dress sharp day, where students paid $2 to ditch their usual clothes and wear something formal. At first, it was a flop. Hardly anyone signed up. Travis Miller and his friends mocked the idea. "Who wants to look like Hill, the thrift store CEO?" He jeered in the cafeteria, laughter erupting around him. Marcus swallowed his anger, his hands clenching under the table. But then something unexpected happened. Jamal stood up, slammed his tray down, and shouted, "I'm in! $2 right here. Who else?" Slowly, other students joined in. By the end of the day, Marcus had raised $180. Not a fortune, but enough to take the next step. Every victory was followed by doubt. Lying awake, Marcus heard the voices of his critics louder than the cheers of supporters. "You don't belong here. Cheap suit. Funeral boy." Some nights he almost believed them, but then he'd flip open his notebook, running his fingers across the pages filled with ideas. Each line reminded him why he couldn't quit. Through Mr. Carter, Marcus got a chance to attend a local entrepreneurship workshop. It was filled with college students, budding professionals, nobody his age. When he stood to present his idea, whispers rippled through the room. A man in a sleek navy suit smirked. "Interesting concept, kid. But you're too young. Nobody's going to trust you with their money." Marcus's face burned. He forced himself to continue, his voice trembling but steady. "Maybe. But when they trust my vision, they'll forget my age." The room fell quiet. Not convinced, but not laughing either. For Marcus, that silence was fuel. Momentum began to build. With Kayla's cousin's help, Marcus produced his first decent-looking suit. He wore it proudly to school. For once, instead of snickers, he heard compliments. "Yo, that's clean," one student said. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. He started posting pictures online, branding his small venture Hill & Co. His following grew, slowly, but steadily. Then came the email. Marcus opened his laptop late one night to find a message from a local youth entrepreneurship contest. The prize, $5,000 in seed money. The catch, he'd be competing against older, more experienced candidates. His stomach twisted. He could already imagine Travis laughing if he failed, but the chance was too big to ignore. He clicked apply. In the weeks leading up to the contest, Marcus practiced relentlessly. He rehearsed in front of mirrors, his mother, and even strangers in the park. His grandmother corrected his posture. Jamal recorded videos so Marcus could analyze his delivery, yet doubt gnawed at him every time he stumbled. At one rehearsal, his voice cracked mid-sentence. He froze, hands trembling. What if I mess up? What if I embarrass myself again? His mother stepped forward, resting her hand on his shoulder. Marcus, they laughed once. Don't let them do it again. This time, you're ready. Her words settled into him like steel. The night before the contest, Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He could hear the faint hum of traffic outside, the drip of a leaky faucet in the kitchen. Every sound amplified his nerves. Tomorrow, everything changes, he thought. Either I prove them wrong or I prove them right. As sleep finally pulled him under, one truth burned in his chest. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for every kid who'd ever been laughed at for daring to dream in a cheap suit. The stage was set. The humiliation of the past year had built into something unbreakable. And Marcus was about to walk straight into the moment that would either crush him forever or crown him with the respect he'd been chasing all along. The auditorium hummed with nervous energy. Rows of folding chairs filled with students, mentors, and business leaders. The air smelled of fresh paper programs and bitter coffee, the kind of scent that clung to long nights and big decisions. Marcus sat in the back row, palms sweating, suit pressed within an inch of its life. It wasn't designed. It wasn't expensive. But it was his. Every stitch carried hours of labor, mistakes corrected, dreams stitched into fabric. On stage, a moderator adjusted the microphone. Welcome to the city's Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge, she announced. Tonight, you'll witness the next generation of business leaders. One by one, competitors filed across the stage, polished, confident, first-year college students with crisp resumes. A few faces Marcus recognized from earlier workshops. They spoke with practiced ease, clicking through slides filled with charts and buzzwords. When Travis Miller strutted onto the stage in a navy blue suit worth more than Marcus's rent, the crowd leaned in. He smiled like he owned the room. His pitch? An app that delivered coffee faster, slick, shallow. The judges clapped anyway. Marcus's stomach tightened. His turn was next. When his name was called, Marcus Hill, the room shifted. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some faces showed curiosity, others skepticism. He stood, legs heavy, each step up the stairs echoing louder than the last. His throat was dry. His hands trembled. For a split second, the old humiliation returned. Laughter in the lobby, whispers in the store. But then he remembered his grandmother's words. Mountains don't move on the first push. Marcus gripped the podium, took a shaky breath and began. I'm Marcus Hill, and I know what it feels like to walk into a room and be laughed at for what you wear. The auditorium fell still. No charts, no slides, just words. When you can't afford the right suit, people decide who you are before you even speak. They think you don't belong. But what if you could? What if a kid like me could walk into a job interview, a presentation, a classroom, and look like he belonged, without choosing between rent and respect? He lifted his chin, voice steady now. That's why I created Hill & Co. affordable, stylish suits for young people who want to be taken seriously. Because respect shouldn't be a luxury, gasps whispered through the audience. One judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing with interest, but then a voice pierced the silence from the crowd. Nice story, kid, Travis called out, smirking. But nobody's gonna trust some teenager with a fake suit company. Laughter erupted from a cluster of students in the back. Marcus's chest burned. For a heartbeat, he almost faltered. The microphone caught his hesitation. The silence was deafening. Then Marcus did something nobody expected. He stepped out from behind the podium. This suit? He said, tugging at his sleeve. I made it. The crowd shifted, whispers breaking like waves. I stitched it in a kitchen with borrowed fabric and second-hand tools. It's not perfect, but it's mine. And if I can make this with almost nothing, imagine what I could do with the right support. The judges leaned in now, pens flying across their notes. The audience quieted, tension sharp enough to slice the air. Marcus paused, letting the silence stretch. His heart pounded. His voice dropped lower, stronger. You see, this isn't just about clothes. It's about dignity. About telling kids like me, you deserve to be seen and not laughed at. Not dismissed, respected. Applause began, slow at first, then building. A few students stood, clapping harder. Jamal's voice rang out from the back. "That's my boy!" Marcus swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in his eyes. When he finished, the moderator thanked him. Questions from the judges? The first judge, a stern woman in glasses, raised her hand. "Marcus, your story is powerful, but how will you scale? What's your plan for growth?" Marcus straightened. "Partnerships with local sewists, online direct-to-consumer sales, targeting schools and youth programs. We start small, build trust, and grow one stitch at a time." The judges nodded. Another leaned forward. "And why you? Why should we believe in you?" Marcus's eyes burned with determination. "Because no one believes in me, not yet. And that's exactly why I'll fight harder than anyone else in this room." The auditorium held its breath. Then the head judge cleared his throat. "Thank you, Marcus. We'll deliberate." Marcus stepped off stage, his chest heaving, sweat beading at his temples. He'd given everything. Now it was out of his hands, minutes dragged like hours. Competitors whispered, glancing at Marcus with smirks. Travis lounged in his chair, already looking like the winner. Finally, the judges returned. The head judge lifted the microphone. "In third place," a name Marcus didn't recognize. "In second place," another. Marcus's heart pounded, hope slipping. "It's over. I didn't make it. And in first place." The judge paused, scanning the room. "Marcus Hill!" The room exploded. Applause thundered, echoing through Marcus's bones. He froze, stunned, until Jamal grabbed him in a bear hug, shouting. His grandmother's voice cracked with pride, but the twist wasn't just the victory. It came in the form of a man walking up from the audience. A man Marcus recognized instantly. It was Mr. Dalton, the same hiring manager who'd dismissed him months. Although Dalton's expression wasn't mocking now. It was impressed, humbled. He extended his hand. "Marcus, I misjudged you. I want to talk about how we can support Hill & Co." The crowd gasped. Travis's jaw clenched, his smirk shattered. For Marcus, the handshake wasn't about Dalton's approval. It was about the reversal. The boy who was once laughed at in the lobby now stood as the leader of the room. As flashbulbs popped from local reporters, Marcus looked down at his suit. Crooked stitches, faded fabric, imperfect, but powerful. He realized this was more than a win. It was a beginning. A seed breaking through concrete. The humiliation that once crushed him had become the fire that lifted him, and everyone watching knew it. The applause thundered long after Marcus left the stage. His name, Marcus Hill, echoed across the auditorium like a chant, each syllable erasing the sting of every insult, every smirk, every "you don't belong here." Reporters swarmed him in the lobby, their cameras flashing, microphones crowding his face. "Marcus, how does it feel to win?" one asked. Marcus hesitated, eyes scanning the crowd. There, near the back, he saw Travis Miller slumped against the wall, his expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume. For once, the smirk was gone. Marcus smiled softly. "It feels," he said into the microphone, "like I was never supposed to lose." The words rippled through the reporters, through the students, through his own chest. Travis tried to laugh it off, tried to crack a joke about pity votes, but nobody laughed with him. His friends shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his eyes. For the first time, the weight of his privilege wasn't a shield. It was a mirror, reflecting just how hollow it looked against Marcus's triumph. That week, Marcus's story spread beyond the contest. Local newspapers ran headlines. "Teen entrepreneur defies odds, wins youth challenge." Social media buzzed with pictures of Marcus in his handmade suit. Comments flooded in, "That kid's going places." Respect to Marcus Hill, proof that hard work pays off. At school, the same students who once whispered now stopped him in hallways, shaking his hand. asking about Hill and Co. Even teachers who had underestimated him looked at him differently, not with surprise, but with respect. At home, Denise Hill sat at the kitchen table, tears streaming as she unfolded the newspaper with Marcus's picture splashed across the front page. "You did it, baby," she whispered. His grandmother placed her hand over his. "No, we did it. Every ancestor who pushed, every hand that worked, every dream that didn't die, they're all standing with you." Marcus swallowed hard, his chest tightening with emotion. For the first time in his life, he didn't just feel like he belonged, he felt like he was leading the way. One afternoon, Marcus walked back into the same downtown office building where he had once been mocked. This time, he wasn't carrying a cheap briefcase. He wasn't trembling. He was there for a meeting with Dalton, who had offered to connect him with investors. As Marcus stepped into the lobby, heads turned again. But there was no laughter, only whispers of recognition. The receptionist, who once chuckled at him, stood quickly, smiling nervously. "Mr. Hill, welcome back. They're expecting you upstairs." "Mr. Hill?" Marcus held her gaze for a moment, then gave a slight nod. The sound of his footsteps across the marble no longer echoed with shame. They echoed with power. That night, back in his room, Marcus hung his suit on the closet door. It was still imperfect, still faded, but now it was a symbol. Proof that dignity couldn't be bought. It had to be built, thread by thread, he whispered to himself. This is just the start, because Marcus Hill wasn't done. He had tasted respect, but now he was ready to create it, not just for himself, but for every kid who would come after him and the world. It was finally ready to listen. Marcus's story isn't just about one teenager who wore a suit. It's about what that suit represented: dignity, determination, the refusal to shrink when the world tries to laugh you out of the room. Too often, society tells young people, especially young black men, that they don't belong in specific spaces, that their dreams are too big. Their worth is not defined by the cut of their suit or the shine on their shoes. But Marcus showed us something powerful. Respect isn't handed down. It's earned through resilience, through standing tall even when the room is filled with doubt. Every insult Marcus endured became fuel. Every laugh became fire. And instead of letting bitterness consume him, he turned his pain into purpose. That's the lesson. You don't have to match their privilege to surpass their expectations. You don't have to own the room to own your destiny. When Marcus walked back into that office building, he wasn't just a kid in a faded suit anymore. He was a symbol. A reminder that greatness doesn't always arrive polished. It arrives persistent. And here's the truth. We all face our own lobby moments. Times when the world mocks us, underestimates us, or tries to push us aside. In those moments, the choice is ours. Do we shrink or do we rise? Marcus rose, and because he did, the laughter stopped. Now I want to ask you, if you've ever been underestimated, laughed at, or told you couldn't do something, what did you do next? Did it break you or did it build you? Drop your answer in the comments below. Because your story, just like Marcus's, might be the spark someone else needs to keep walking forward, even while the world is laughing.